All right, welcome to another episode of Political Animals. Today we're going to be covering what's going on in Venezuela, but we're not going to look at Trump's side of it. Let's look at it from the perspective of the Venezuelan people, because Trump has now said that the airspace over Venezuela needs to be closed, that planes can't come in, and that he's supposedly going to come on land to fight terrorists, to fight drug dealers and drug cartel people. Um, we all know that's bullshit, and what he really wants to do is get his hands on the resources of Venezuela, especially the oil. Um, if his goal is to get rid of Maduro, that's possible. He can have him assassinated or whatever. But if his goal is to actually control the country's resources, it's not possible. And the reason it's not possible is because Venezuela has been seriously radicalized into a socialist collective society. And what I mean by that is that they don't want outsiders running them. And thanks to Chavez and to past movements before, they want to determine their own identity and their own destination. So the biggest mistake America can make if it thinks it wants to control Venezuela's resources is by killing Maduro. It's actually going to turn people who are against Maduro to being in favor of him because we know that Venezuela does have economic problems. But if America comes in and kills him, all that it's going to lead to is guerrilla warfare. A lot of their militia people, I think they have up to at least 1 million. Maduro says they have 4.5 million. They have at least 1.5 million militia. These are citizens who are ready for any invasion. So what's going to happen is if they come in and get rid of Maduro, whether through ground attack or through aerial attack or through assassination, what's going to happen as soon as that happens? All of they call them collectivos, will break into small units, go up into the mountains, go into the jungles, and also go to the periphery where the cities are, and they will continually strike and use guerrilla warfare to keep the country unstable. And what you would then have is that the country will be caught up in a serious armed conflict, which is actually one-sided. Where you have the collectivos who will strike anybody who's part of America's government there, and will strike anywhere where they can use their resources like oil. Make sure they'll bomb the oil refineries and everything, and America will just find itself embroiled in a conflict in which either they're going to send millions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of troops and it'll go on for decades, or they'll just leave the country alone and it'll be in chaos, and then the world market for oil is going to be worse because Venezuelan oil will be too expensive to refine, and you may not even be able to refine or supply it because the collectivos are the actual spirit of that country. What do they call them again? What do they call those? The Bolivarian revolution has already taken over that country, and they're not going to allow a foreign power to come in there and take their resources. They'll rather keep the place burning to the ground. So if Trump wants to and America want to get access to Venezuelan oil, then they need to use diplomacy and work with Maduro rather than attacking them. If they send in the U.S. would have to send in 100,000 troops to really try. They could never occupy Venezuela, but if they really want to do some damage in it, they'd have to send in 100,000 troops. But the problem is, once they come in, these collectivos, who are up to 1 million, will be everywhere, and they won't know. And these people know their territory, they know their land, so they've trained like this. And what will happen to the U.S. will be just exactly what happened in Afghanistan and what happened in Vietnam. It'll be a long war. A lot of people will get killed, and America will go back with its tail between its legs and have people who are cocaine addicts, not cocaine addicts, have heroin addicts, and people shooting themselves in the head from the stress of war. They don't know what war is. Americans are not ready for war. They killed 3 million Vietnamese people. They only lost 60,000. And yet the Americans are still suffering from the psychological trauma of Vietnam. If they want trauma, let them come into Venezuela. What are your thoughts, Kunle?
Yeah, there's so many things about this war on Venezuela. Before we even begin, you have to ask, what is the premise of this invasion? And when
Yeah.
you look at it, why would Maduro want to make a few million off some drugs? And Venezuela is not the main exporter of fentanyl. Why would he want to spend all his time making money from cocaine when he's
Yeah.
sitting on the largest oil reserves in the
Yep.
world, bigger than Saudi Arabia? The money is bigger. So before you even judge Maduro, why would I be chasing after drug money when oil money is bigger? So this is where
Yeah.
the motivation is. It is oil money. That is where it is. These
Yeah.
attacks have been defined by the UN as attacks that are against international law, because you cannot act as judge, juror, and executioner without providing any evidence or facts of the fact that these people that you're attacking are are actual fact criminals and so on and so forth. And when you abandon due process like this, you bring in chaos and
Yeah, but
anarchy and
if they want to
disorder.
go after drugs, let them go to Colombia, which is the number one, and Mexico.
They're
Those
not going after drugs. It's a pretext to try to control
or Afghanistan.
Venezuela's oil.
Afghanistan provides heroin. It's a pretext. So yeah, so I think that's been established. But another thing is that if they think that they're going to do a regime change, it's going to be very hard to do that because that country is ideological. Just like America is a white supremacist nation, Venezuela lives and dies. Their religion is Chavez. Now the country has problems. There's corruption and everything, but the people, the farmers, the people who make up the most numbers, just like the Viet Cong, the farmers, the fishermen, all those people have been radicalized into a collective movement, and they are all armed. Venezuela doesn't need a military because their style of fighting is going to be guerrilla fighting, guerrilla combat. What are your thoughts, Kunle?
Yeah, I mean, no matter how good or bad their style of
Yeah,
fighting is, but the most powerful thing that they have is an idea. And you
yes,
cannot defeat an idea with guns and bombs and drones and weapons. And America seems to have failed to understand this every time they enter into all these wars with countries like Vietnam or Korea or Somalia. I mean, they have overwhelming weaponry over these countries, but they cannot defeat them because they cannot defeat the idea. And the idea of socialism appeals to the common man. And the idea of the oligarch nation that appeals to the Western countries is simply what I'll call it a facade. And then when some see it and they are disillusioned, and some don't see it, and but it's not sufficient to fight people that do understand that you do need a socialist movement in your country, even if you're a Western democracy. Most Western democracies in Western Europe have social parties and democracies that operate in the interest of the people. And America has turned it into the idea. American oligarchs have blinded the ordinary American person into believing that socialism is communism and communism is evil. And therefore, he has fallen in love with the chains that are used to bind him.
yeah.
And that is the slavery that affects all Americans, not just Black Americans, but white, working class, middle class, lower
Mhm.
American.
Because
These
white
chains bind
white
them.
Americans used to have they used to have and not only white, black, they used to have labor unions, and they used to have, what do they call it, the union, yeah, the union, which stands
Yeah.
for workers' rights. And in America, if
Jimmy
there's ever going to
Hoffa.
be in America, if there's ever going to be social, it's not going to be direct socialism. It'll be through labor unions. So whereas the workers should have equal share in the company, with the CEOs and everybody else, and they should have to vote for which way the companies go. But they don't have it that way, which is why a lot of American companies shipped out everything to China because the labor is cheaper, and that's why the U.S. is in trouble now. Now let's get back to this thing. Maduro, Trump tried to kill Maduro in his first term. It didn't work. He used a drone. It didn't work. The reason they can't kill him is that if they do so, they're going to turn him into a martyr. And it's going to make it, that country's going to become more resistant. So Trump tried a new strategy this time. He came to Maduro and said, "Hey, stop doing business with Russia and China for oil and do it with America." Now, Venezuela is a free country, free to trade with whoever they want. But Maduro told Trump, "Okay, let's negotiate." But Trump doesn't want to negotiate because he knows that if he has to negotiate, he's going to have to compete against uh, China and Russia. And China and Russia have entered a trade agreement with Venezuela through BRICS, which gives them favorable conditions for their resources. Trump doesn't actually want to do a deal with, he just wants Maduro to hand him all of the resources basically for free. This is what why the Ukraine war started. The part of the Ukraine was going to go to Russia instead of the EU because Russia said they'll give them favorable terms to trade with them. But the West doesn't want to trade. It only wants, what the West means is trade is that you give us your resources and we'll give you a lot of loans and you pay us back with your resources. That's not real trade. So now that he sees that he can't get that oil just handed over to him, he wants to say, "Oh, now because you're hanging out, now you're a drug dealing country," because he doesn't want to say the real reason is that they're trying to destroy BRICS. So that's, I'm going to end with this: the war in Venezuela, the war in Ukraine, the war in I'm trying to remember. You're just making up things and you don't know what you're going to say next. What I'm saying, we're seeing a lot of conflicts all over the world. China, Taiwan, all of it is not for America to just overthrow those governments. It's to disrupt BRICS because BRICS is now the center of production and commodities and power. And you see it now because in America, 30 years ago, if you were a philosophy professor, you could make $100,000 a year because the government was doing well, the economy was doing well. And then China just had poor factory workers. Now it's the opposite. China now is beginning to look like what the West looked like 50 years ago. Professors, art, music. Whenever you start having a cultural flourishing like that, like the Renaissance, it means that you already have a productive economy and you can throw money into those. Because, it's sort of like in Nigeria, we're talking Kasami with philosophy. We're not paying no goddamn philosopher for $100,000 when people can't even afford fuel. So the point I'm saying is that the U.S. economy got so big that it could afford the arts, entertainment, and things. Now all of that is being shifted to China because China has now turned its productive capability to bring people out of poverty and even put them into upper middle class. So this is the war because Americans are complaining. I stay at home all day. I can't go watch movies. A movie is freaking $15. So the idea I'm making is that the U.S. needs to disrupt BRICS so that they can still control resources of countries like Venezuela and co, so that Americans can continually live above their means and have I won't call it superficial because things like education and arts and humanities are important, but you can't have them if you don't have an industrial base, and that's what the U.S. is using. And you go to places like England too. Used to be that was where the Industrial Revolution started. But now the economy, but it was based off of African resources. They don't have African resources in Great Britain anymore, so they can't live at that level anymore. And I think that's what the West is afraid of. So that's why they're going after Maduro. That's why they're going after Iran. That was the other one I forgot. Going after Iran because all of these are major players in the BRICS. What do you think, Kunle?
Yeah, so this is the motivation
Yeah.
of the Western countries. Even when they do build roads and bridges and anything or any kind of infrastructure, simply to reap and just simply to collect from that country. And this is the problem why the Western Europe can't compete. It's because they will say, I'm going to give Nigeria $1 billion. What happens with that $1 billion? Half of that money goes to corrupt politicians, and the other half is used to support despots and little banditry groups that will create instability to justify that Western country putting military bases all over your country. What does China do? China, you tell them, I want to build a road. Here's $1 billion. They will build the fucking road.
Yeah.
Okay. They will build the road. They may do some stupid shit like put some tariffs on it or say, you owe me money, give me money. I do house for you, you do this. But,
Oh
at
yeah,
the
that's
end
what
of
they
the
do.
day,
You have to pay, but
yes,
that's a tax because they
yes,
built it.
but they will give you that infrastructure and it
Yeah.
will be on your terms. They're not going to say, oh, I just want an infrastructure that allows me to simply mine your things and take them away. Okay, yes, I have mines, you don't have a mining company, but I will give you what you want in order to do, to achieve where you want to be. So I will give you the infrastructures and the manufacturing ability and those things that you need, electricity, roads, waterworks, once transport, rail.
Mm.
China is building these things, and when they build these things, and you see them, America, when they put their money down, you don't see anything. You literally, they claim to be giving us $1 billion a year or something, but I haven't seen anything to
No.
justify what they're doing. Nothing. I can't point to anything. I can point to a road and say a Chinese company built it. I can't do that for any kind of investment that America has done in this country. And
No.
anybody that wants to say to the contrary, I challenge you. Please
Well,
come and show me
even
the
when I
works,
came back to
the
Nigeria last
development,
year,
the
Murtala
infrastructure, the
Mohammed
health.
Airport. When I came back
Yes.
to Nigeria, Murtala Mohammed, I saw the extension that was added by help of Chinese investment.
It's not
Also,
Chinese.
I saw
America's
thousands
not
of
doing
Chinese
anything.
people coming into those guys coming every day, businessmen coming into the country. So go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry. Yeah.
the West isn't doing anything. They're not
Right.
anymore. They stopped many, many years ago when I was still in
Yeah.
school, and
And
they
also,
stopped
their
doing
military
anything.
production is gone because the U.S. and Europe have depleted their military reserves, trying to help Ukraine, which is desperately lost. But anyway, yeah. What are your last thoughts? So we head out. Yeah.
Yeah, so when we look at the balance in effect of what's happening in Venezuela, Venezuela is naturally going to tend towards BRICS. And those armies of BRICS, China and Russia, are beginning to increase their naval presence in those areas in Latin America and Southeast Asia around Taiwan, which may be invaded in 2027, according to some Western claims and sources. But at the end of the day, all these countries are showing America and G7 that BRICS are to be reckoned with. And Venezuela is being forced to run harder towards BRICS. And the more protection that BRICS can afford Venezuela, the harder it will be for America to try to use its influence. And because there's so much derision and so much bitterness towards the American government and how it has impoverished Venezuela over the decades, it'll happily and lovingly fall into the arms of BRICS, like an
Mhm.
like an abused woman who finds a handsome
No,
millionaire.
like you know what Bricks is? Bricks is Joe. Remember Joe? Joe, the
Yeah,
R&B singer. Your man ain't treating you right. You can come to me. You know.
something like that.
I'm just
Because I
joking, man.
mean, Venezuela is
Bad and right.
America's wife, but America has been an abusive husband, and
Yeah,
Russia and China are saying, hey girl,
we
want to come
got you.
over here? Come
I,
on over to my place.
Come on over to my place. No, it's like this. The Chinese,
Come
come on
on
over. How
over
does
to
that
name.
go? All right, let's get out of here. So, Kuna, I'll see you in about 40 minutes. Then we'll do the F1. Okay.
All right, cool.
All right, you
So
guys
it's
have
been an
fun, though.
interesting
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
been
take
an
care.
interesting look into what's been happening around the world in Latin America and America poking into Venezuela's oil reserves, which are, as I've said many times, big in Saudi Arabia. And this is a story for another day, but from the rest of today, for myself and Musto, we bid you goodbye, farewell. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right, so I'll see you in about 40 minutes. Thank you. And
All right.
that'll be. We don't have to do anything tomorrow.